Udhara sarva evaite Jnani tvatma eva me matam Ashtita sahi yuktatma Mam evanu tamam gatim. All these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls. But he who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider verily to dwell in me, being engaged in my transcendental service, he attains me. We're reading this evening from the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, in which Krishna is explaining the qualities of the devotees who are most dear to him. The conclusion of Bhagavad Gita is to become dear to Krishna, because he is the supreme personality of Godhead, and he is the ultimate controller of both the material and spiritual potencies. When Krishna is pleased with us, then by his undefeatable power, he can protect us under all circumstances. And when he is pleased with us, he can awaken within our heart something that we and no other power in this entire creation can awaken. And that is pure, unmotivated, uninterrupted love. Pure bhakti, which far surpasses even mukti. Krishna explains here in Gita, Yogi nama pisarabesham madgyatena antaratmana, that those devotees who are always imbibing me with great faith, who are always engaged in my loving service, they are the highest transcendentalists. Tesham jnani nitya yukta eka bhaktir vishishyate priyo hi jnani no tyaratam aham sacha mama priya. The wise who is in full knowledge in union with me through pure devotional service is best, for I am very dear to him and he is very dear to me. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavam ampapadyate vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabhaha. Krishna says, after practicing all the various religious systems, one who surrenders to Vasudeva, one who surrenders his free will in my loving service, he is most dear to me. He is known as a true Mahatma, and he is the highest of all. Of course, Krishna has spoken these words in Gita, but through his devotees, he has illustrated what is most pleasing to him and by which means we can attain the highest perfection of life. Today is the disappearance day of Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. Speaking of the lives of the great saintly persons is to hear practically the Bhagavad Gita's highest teachings in action. So I would like to speak for a few minutes tonight about this great exalted soul. And so many wonderful and important lessons we can learn from a brief sketch of his life. Raghunath Das Goswami was born of a great devotee of the name Tapan Mishra. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is none other than the Yuga avatar, the divine prophesied incarnation of Lord Sri Krishna, who appeared to spread the Yuga Dharma of chanting the holy name of God in this age of Kali Yuga. While he was living as a student in Navadvip Dham of Bengal, at one time he took a pilgrimage to Bangladesh, or East Bengal. While he was there, he was demonstrating such inconceivable scholarship in the way he was teaching Sanskrit grammar that he was getting hundreds and hundreds, even thousands of people coming to be his students. Just when he was about to leave, one very sincere seeker of the truth of the name Tapan Mishra approached him. For years and years and years, this man was searching through various religious scriptures and philosophical doctrines for the highest goal of life and the way to attain it. He was dissatisfied with all material pursuits. He was dissatisfied with mundane education. Unless he understood what is the goal of life, he considered his life was a useless waste. He was so sincere. And he was praying. He was praying to the Lord with such deep intensity that one evening, the Lord appeared to him in a dream and explained to him that I have incarnated in this world and I am just now waiting for you. And he told him where to meet him. So Tapan Mishra came to the place where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was sitting with his students. And he fell at the lotus feet of the Lord and told him that there is no meaning, purpose, or satisfaction in my life unless I understand the goal. Please instruct me. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in such a simple but such a clear manner, he told him the goal of life is to love Krishna and to serve Krishna with your body, mind, words, and soul. And the means of developing that love in this age is to chant his holy name. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu specifically and directly told him, you chant this 16-word mantra that is given in the Kali Santarana Upanishad. It is the Maha Mantra, and it is the greatest and most powerful of all mantras. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave him a very mysterious instruction. He told him that you go and you live in Varanasi. Now in those days, there were no devotees of God in Varanasi. There were only impersonal philosophers. But he accepted that strange order as his life and soul, and he moved to Varanasi. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him that I will be coming to Varanasi in the near future, and at that time I will explain in more detail about this chanting of Harinam and the goal of life. So he moved to Varanasi, and there was one other Vaishnav who was living there at the time. His name was Chandrasekhar Vaidya. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu after he had taken sannyas some years before, he went to Vrindavan Dham. And on his return from Vrindavan, he stopped and he stayed in Varanasi for 2 months. During that time, he stayed at the house of Chandrasekhar, and he would take his prasad at the home of Tapan Mishra. By that time, Tapan Mishra had a young son. His name was Raghunath Bhattacharya. And this young boy, how much love he had for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. How much attentive he was to hear every word. He would take great pleasure in massaging the legs of the Lord after the Lord would spend hours and hours a day dancing while he would be chanting in the kirtan of the holy name. And he would accept the most menial, humble services. Although Raghunath Bhattacharya was very learned, and he was a Brahmin, he would take great pleasure in washing the dishes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and doing such simple, little services. But through doing this, he became very intimately favored by the Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returned to Jagannath Puri, his residence, and soon after this, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami decided, when he was a young man, that he was going to give up everything of the world and simply surrender his life to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be his servant. So with the blessings of his family members, he left Varanasi and began the long walk to Sri Purushottam Kshetra, Jagannath Puri Dham. An interesting story took place on the way. He met a very, very learned scholar who was also famous in that area of Bengal as one of the greatest devotees of Lord Sri Ramchandra. His name was Ramdas Vishwas. Ramdas Vishwas. And it is explained that Ramdas Vishwas would chant the names and glories of Sri Ramchandra 24 hours a day. Such a personality. And when he met Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, he said, please, he said, let me carry your bags and let me serve you. Raghunath Bhatta said, you are of a Kayasta caste, that is a very respectable caste. And besides that, you are a very, very learned scholar, and you are a very famous devotee of Lord Ram, and you're always chanting his names and glories. There's no need for you to carry my bags on your head. Let us just go together to Jagannath Puri in great happiness. Ramdas said, I have already renounced everything of this world to go to live in Puri Dham. He said, but I will find the greatest joy and happiness to carry your bags on my head and to be your menial servant. So just to satisfy Ramdas, Raghunath Bhatt really had no choice. So together they began to travel to Jagannath Puri, and the whole time Ramdas Vishwas was chanting the glories and the names of Sri Ram. Finally they came to Jagannath Puri. Raghunath Bhatta, with great love and anticipation, he went to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's home. And there he fell like a stick, offering his prostrated dandavat, obeisance, at the lotus feet of Lord Gauranga. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, recognizing him and as his dear eternal servant, he lifted him up, and with great love and affection the Lord embraced him. Raghunath Bhatta, on behalf of his father and on behalf of Chandrasekhar, he offered his obeisances. In this way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and himself exchanged so many loving words. And then Lord Gauranga, he asked Govinda, his servant, you kindly arrange some nice facility for Raghunath to stay. and bring him some prasad and bring him to see Lord Jagannath. Ramdas Vishwas, although such a famous and learned personality, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed him no special attention. He gave him no special mercy at all. Why is this? This is one of the most important things to understand what I'm about to explain to you. Although Ramdas Vishwas was chanting the holy name of Ram and discussing Ramayan Leela throughout the day, every day, and was famous as being a great saint amongst almost everybody he met, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is none other than Krishna, who resides within the heart of all living beings. And Krishna knows our innermost desire. Krishna does not see the external appearance of our devotion. He sees what is in our heart, what is our motivating factor, what is our dedication, what is our humility, what is our sincerity. And he will judge everything on that basis. You can make a show of being a saintly person. You can make a show of being very, very great devotee of God. But Krishna cares nothing for your show. Krishna is only concerned with your heart. Ramdas Vishwas. He was chanting the name of Ram throughout the day and discussing his glories and rendering service in such a menial way to carry devotees' bags on his head. But his motivation was, by performing these activities, I will become one with Ram. He was not in the mood of an eternal servant. He was an impersonalist, which means his ultimate desire was not to serve Ram, but to be Ram. That is a transgression from the true and pure principle of love. Jivera Swarupoy Krishnara Nityadas. We are eternally the servants of Lord Sri Krishna, of Lord Sri Rama. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained to us through his Shikshastakam prayers what should be the true heart of a real devotee of the Lord. Na danam na janam na sundarim kavitam va jagadisha kamaye mama janamani janamanishwari bhavatad bhakti rahoite kitai. That, my Lord, I do not want to approach you and to serve you with the ambition of attaining any amount of wealth, material prosperity, nor do I care to achieve beautiful relationship with women, nor do I care to achieve fame and followers and prestige in this world, even disciples, nor do I care anything for liberation or mukti. My desire is fixed for only one purpose. Then I may be your causeless servant, birth after birth after birth. If we want to be God, what type of service is it? That I serve you, then I take your position. In the truest, purest, and highest sense of Sanatana Dharma, we must understand that we are eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. We are qualitatively one with God. We are Satchit Ananda, eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. but qualitatively, we are an insignificant particle of God. And God is the supreme, complete whole. As the sunshine is an insignificant part of the sun, but it radiates the same qualities as the sun. As the part, it is the nature of the Jivatma, the soul, to eternally be immersed in the loving service of the complete whole, or of Krishna. And it is that humility and that form of devotion and eagerness to serve that Krishna is explaining here is most dear to him. It is the highest knowledge because it is realization of the truth. So Ramdas Vishwas, he became very dear and very much, let us say, attractive to the world, but not to God. Similarly, we see in many places of the world people who can speak very nicely, who have incredible memories, who have what we call charisma, or the power to attract people. Sometimes when they speak, tens, thousands of people come to hear them. Sometimes millions come to become disciples. Sometimes it's because they can perform some magic tricks. Sometimes it's because they are very learned. But a true devotee of the Lord judges things the same way the Lord judges. What is this person's humility? And what is this person's motivation to just be the servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord? That is the only characteristic that impresses Krishna. He's not impressed by our magic tricks. He can create planets, can we? He's not impressed by our ability to speak. Because whatever we're speaking, the language, the words, and the power to speak is coming from him. Krishna is only impressed by humble devotion, by the mood of eternal servitude. Raghunath Bhatt had this mood, and therefore he was most dear to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Raghunath Bhatt lived in Jagannath Puri with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for 8 months. During that 8 months, he would often invite Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his home to take prasad. And Raghunath Bhatt, Goswami, used to cook for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he was a very, very excellent cook. In fact, it is explained by Kaviraj Goswami that whatever he cooked tasted like nectar. He was a master cook. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would take great pleasure to honor his prasad. Of course, we must know that from the point of view of God, what does it mean to be a master cook? It means to know how to spice each preparation with pure love, with bhakti. Because Krishna tastes not the external form of a food, he tastes our devotion. If we cook for the Lord in an agitated state of mind, if we cook for the Lord because we feel we have to, that's what our food tastes like to Krishna. But if we cook because we want to please him, we want to please his devotees, that food will taste like nectar to the Lord. So Raghunath Bhatt Goswami, he would prepare this food with such affection, with such love. But because he had such an affection and such love, the Lord did empower him even on the external level, that whatever he made tasted like nectar. And he would also massage the legs of the Lord when he would have nice kirtans after. In this way, Raghunath Bhatt Goswami became such a dear servant. And one day, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him that your parents, mother and father, are both my very, very dear devotees. They are pure Vaishnavas, but now they are very old. He said, you should return home and you should serve your parents. This is a very interesting instruction. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not just telling Raghunath Bhatta to serve his parents, but he was telling him to be the servant of pure Vaishnavas. We must know that there is no greater way of pleasing the Lord than pleasing his devotees. Mad bhakta puja vyadika. Krishna explained to Uddhava in the 11th canto that the highest worship to me is the worship of my devotees. The most intimate service to me is service to my devotees. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave another instruction to Raghunath. He told him, do not marry. Harivo. Because he saw that Raghunath Bhatta was already a young man. He was unmarried. He was unattached and entangled by all the affairs of family life. And he was making tremendous spiritual advancement. And he was very, very detached. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him that you are doing so well as a brahmachari, you should remain a brahmachari. For one who is already entangled and attached by family life, they must perform their duties in Krishna consciousness. But Mahaprabhu Sri Chaitanya did not want Raghunath to get involved in all of these complications. So he told him, you do not marry. You can do so much service, and you can be so free to make positive spiritual advancement in a life of renunciation and detachment. He told him, when you go back to Varanasi to serve your parents, you should make sure that each and every day you hear the Srimad Bhagavatam from a self-realized soul. He didn't just tell him to hear the Bhagavatam, but he said you must hear it from a self-realized soul. These days there are so many professional reciters of Bhagavatam. But the true spirit and the essence of the Bhagavatam cannot come through the words of professional reciters. It can only come through those humble servants of the Lord who have dedicated their lives in his loving service. Nasta prayesya bhadreshu nityam bhagavati sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. The Bhagavad itself says you must hear Bhagavatam each day, but you must hear it from a person Bhagavatam, and you must serve that person. What is a person Bhagavatam? A person whose very life embodies the principles of the Bhagavatam. It is not a question of just having a good memory and speaking nicely. It is a question of actually being an example of what Bhagavatam teaches. Being detached from material sense gratification. Being truly a humble, dedicated, surrendered servant of the Lord. who is repeating, according to the teachings of the Bhagavatam, a real spiritual teacher is one who repeats what he has heard from his guru. No one can approach the Bhagavatam directly. It is only those great souls who have served previous great souls who have the key to unlock the true secret meaning of the Bhagavatam to us. Tasmad gurum prapadyeta jigyasu sreya uttamam. Bhagavat says, you must hear transcendental knowledge from a genuine spiritual master. One who is a humble servant of a previous spiritual master. Through this process of disciplic succession, the true essence of the Bhagavatam is revealed to us by hearing submissively and rendering service to such a qualified, self-realized soul. These were the 3 instructions Mahaprabhu gave to Raghunath Bhatt Goswami. Do not marry and entangle yourself in all materialistic affairs. Serve your aged parents throughout their lives, for the rest of their lives. And hear the Bhagavatam each day from a self-realized soul. When Raghunath Bhatta was feeling the imminent separation of the Lord, after 8 months in his intimate association, he began to weep and cry. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, out of such intense affection for his devotee, he took off his own neck beads and he put them on the neck of Raghunath Bhatt Goswami. And then Srila Raghunath Bhatt Goswami returned to Varanasi. And for the next 4 years, he was immersed in hearing Bhagavatam, and he was immersed in serving his parents. And then both of his parents were taken by Krishna back home, back to Godhead. After they left this world, Raghunath Bhatta completely detached himself from all worldly affairs, and he returned to Jagannath Puri. And there he remained with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for 8 months again, rendering him loving service. At the end of this 8 month, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gave him another instruction. He told him, Raghunath Bhatt, I want you to go to Vrindavan. And I want you to take shelter of my 2 most intimate associates, Rupa and Sanatan Goswamis. You live under their care and you serve with them. And my instruction to you is that you chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, throughout the day. Chant 24 hours a day, Mahamantra. And I want you to hear and to recite the Srimad Bhagavatam. And in the company of Rupa and Sanatan, you become their servant. At that time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gave 2 beautiful gifts. Prasad of Jagannath that he himself received at festival. A garland of tulsi leaves that was 14 cubits long. And some betel nuts that were also the Mahaprasad of Jagannath. He gave them to Raghunath Bhatta. And he kept them in a very special place. And then he proceeded to Vrindavan. When he arrived in Vrindavan, he was so joyously greeted by Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami. In fact, he became one of the great and famous 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. And while he was in Vrindavan, he became a dear and intimate associate of Rupa and Sanatan Goswamis. And in their company, he was constantly immersed in chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. And throughout the day, he would recite Srimad Bhagavatam. And he had such a beautiful voice. It was just like a cuckoo bird. And when he would sing the Bhagavatam verses, he would sing each sloka in 3 to 4 different melodies. And it was so pleasing to hear. He would also cook wonderful, delicious preparations for the Goswamis and for the Govinda Murti. He dedicated, surrendered his life to Rupa Goswami's deity of Radha Govinda. And it was Raghunath Bhatt Goswami who instructed one of his disciples to build the beautiful temple of Radha Govindaji, which is the most famous and most magnificent structure in all of North India. The Radha Govindaji temple was so magnificent that the Mughal ruler Aurangzeb specifically came to Vrindavan to tear down the top 4 of the 7 stories of that temple because he considered it too beautiful. Hindu temples cannot be so beautiful, and he defaced it in so many ways. But it was Raghunath Bhatt Goswami's devotion and his feeling of servant of Srila Rupa Goswami that encouraged him to inspire one of his disciples to build that temple. Also, Raghunath Bhatt Goswami arranged so many beautiful decorations for Radha Govindaji. He offered him a wonderful flute and earrings that are shaped like sharks. Here is another example of the nature of a devotee. Raghunath Bhatt Goswami had no home when he was living in Vrindavan. He was sleeping under a different tree every night. And he would just do madhukari. He would just either fast or beg for some whatever fried grains or roti, whatever would come. He lived such a simple life. He wore only a simple, tattered, discarded loincloth as clothes. And yet he was arranging so much beautiful jewelry and magnificent temples for Krishna to live in and for devotees to come to worship Krishna. How can we understand such a consciousness? In this world, we find people are so anxious to build beautiful houses for themselves and get beautiful jewelry to decorate themselves and make them beautiful, and to arrange wonderful prasad for themselves. Raghunath Bhatt Goswami would arrange the most beautiful jewelry, the most beautiful temples, the most beautiful prasad for Radha Govinda, for Krishna, but he himself just wearing a coarse, old, tattered loincloth, sleeping on the hard ground through the summer and the winter in the forests and then in the jungles, and either fasting or eating the simplest foods. But he was always immersed in transcendental ecstasy because he was always pleasing Krishna. Rupa Goswami explains, whatever you give Krishna, you're not the loser. You gain millions of times over. How do we feed our soul? By feeding Krishna. How do we decorate our hearts? By decorating Krishna. How do we put our hearts and our souls in poverty? By egoistically trying to serve this body and these senses. And forgetting Krishna. Raghunath Bhatt Goswami had such a spirit of humility and gentleness that he would never criticize another Vaishnava devotee of the Lord. And he would never hear the criticism of such a person. Even if there was faults or mistakes in the life of a Vaishnava, He didn't care to hear about it. As far as he was concerned, the fact that he's a devotee of Krishna is all I need to know. He was always seeing the good in others. He refused to see the bad in others. In this connection, our Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, he explained, sometimes in preaching Krishna consciousness, it is a preacher's duty that he must point out the faults in others so that people will not be misled. Or he must point out the faults in others to correct them. That is also perfect. But it is never in a mood of criticism. It is a mood of service. It is in a mood of compassion. But Raghunath Bhatta, he was the type of preacher that would not even do that. He just could not see anything but Krishna in people's hearts. Such a great devotee of the Lord. And as he would recite Bhagavatam and remember the beautiful qualities of Krishna and chant his holy names, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami's eyes would always be filled with tears. His limbs would tremble. His voice would become choked up in transcendental ecstasy. And in this way, by simply following these principles that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave him, he manifested the highest perfection of life, ecstatic love of Krishna. In this way, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami lived as one of the celebrated 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan throughout the rest of his life, manifesting through his actions and through his words an example by which none of us can imitate, but we can all strive to humbly follow. It is such devotees that Krishna is explaining here in Bhagavad Gita that are most dear to him. And by following in the footsteps of such devotees and becoming the servant of the servant of the servant of such devotees, that is the practical method within our own life of how we can become most dear to Krishna. And what else do we want? The gopis of Vrindavan, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, he was actually a incarnation of Ragamanjari, one of the intimate gopi associates of Krishna of Goloka Vrindavan, who descended into this world in the form of a devotee, just to show by example how to love Krishna. And what is the mood of the gopis of Vrindavan? What is the mood of all these great acharyas? Sarvadharaman parityajya mamekam sharanam braja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishamachcha. That we do not want anything else except to please Krishna. What does it mean to surrender to Krishna? Krishna says, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender to me. To surrender does not mean to do some great supernatural works. It means to humbly try to please the Lord in everything we say, everything we do, and everything we think. In your own life, do you want someone to put on a magnificent display of false ego before you? Or do you want someone to just in a very simple and gentle way express their love to you? What will please your heart most? It is common sense. Krishna explains what pleases him most. Patram pushpam palam toyam yome bhakta prayachchati. Offer me a little leaf, flower, fruit, or water. If you offer it with sincere devotion, you will capture my heart. Krishna's Madan Mohan. He attracts our hearts and our minds away from all the illusions of this material world. But he will only do it when we attract his heart through devotional service, through simple, sincere, and genuine bhakti. And Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he instructed Tapan Mishra, and he instructed his son Raghunath Bhatta, and he instructed all of us, all humanity for all time to come, how this principle of pure bhakti can be awakened in our hearts. By chanting the holy name of Krishna sincerely in the association of sincere devotees. Hare Thank you very much.